Join me for a great conversation with Rich Bendis, President, Founder, CEO of BioHealth Innovations from Rockville, Maryland, where we discuss AI, biotech, investment, and the government's obligation in early stage biotech research. Hope you join us. Thank you. Welcome to Biotech Bites. I'm your host, Steve Swan, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by Rich Bendis, the founder, president, and CEO of BioHealth Innovation in Rockville, Maryland. Rockville, Maryland. I got that right, Rich?
You got it right. Rockville, Maryland, Montgomery County.
Cool. Very cool. Thank you. Usually, like I mentioned a minute ago, I start with asking my guests to introduce themselves and how they got to where they are. But I think it would be a little more relevant, I guess, to have you sort of introduce your organization and what your organization is and what you do, and then back into you, right? And how you got to there and what you did to get there. So give us a little background on BioHealth Innovation.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Pleasure to be here with you today. BioHealth Innovation was created around 2011. And I am the founder and CEO, as you mentioned, of BioHealth Innovation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And I actually came into Montgomery County, Maryland, basically as a consultant almost 15 years ago now. And the reason for that is they basically said, we have all of these assets, like the National Institute of Health, the Food and Drug Administration. We had at that time Human Genome Sciences, MedImmune, which were two of the big biotechnology stocks 15 years ago, and companies that were really emerging. Plus, you had some really strong research universities like Johns Hopkins, University System of Maryland, and others. And basically, everything was really government-driven or academic-driven. It wasn't industry-driven. So they said, how do we get a greater return on all of the assets that we have in this region and find a way to get industry more connected? So I came in as a consultant and basically interviewed about 90 people, 55 organizations over a 6-month period, and basically said, there's a challenge. The challenge is, we have the federal government, we have state government, we have local government, everybody's engaged. We have academic institutions, but there is really no direct connectivity to industry. And we had a lot of industry players that were established: United Therapeutics, Emergent Biosolutions, GSK, MedImmune, Human Genome Sciences, but really they were not engaged in the biotech ecosystem at that particular point in time. So I said, what you really need to do is to create a nonprofit organization that's market and industry driven, not dependent on government funding or academic funding, and that the industry is a true partner to it. And it needs to be focused on working with emerging life science companies to provide the go-to-market strategies and commercialization assistance to them, not as much the R&D, because a lot of them are researchers and scientists that understand R&D, but they really didn't have a great deal of business experience. So in floating this to an advisory board back then, they all agreed it needed to be done. But I said, if you're going to create a nonprofit, you really need to create people who have industry, entrepreneurial, investment experience running an organization like this. It also doesn't need to compete with other nonprofit organizations, tech councils, trade associations in the region, and really needs to carve out a space to provide services that are not being provided to these types of people within this area. So everyone agreed. I said, you need to have people step up to the table, provide 3 years worth of funding so that the management team doesn't have to be out there with their hands out looking for money all the time and can focus on the programs to support the ecosystem. So the other thing is, back then, 15 years ago, everybody was referring to everything as biotechnology. And you remember, everybody wanted to have a biotechnology cluster in the United States, whether it's a city, a county, a state, and they wanted to compete with the leading biotechnology centers. And we said, really, there's a lot of things changing in that dynamic. And it's not biotechnology. It's not just life sciences. So we created a new term called BioHealth. And the reason for the BioHealth was the bio industry, pharma industry, medical device industry but it was converging with the technology industries. And you look at AI, machine learning, quantum computing, digital health, all of those elements really were being incorporated into healthcare delivery. And also the pharma, bio companies, medical device, vaccine companies needed to embrace technology more. So we really created the biohealth term, trademarked it, and really created BioHealth Innovation to focus on the biohealth industry, which was broader than just focusing on biotechnology companies. The other thing is, we basically wanted to create programs that nobody else was providing at that time. And so the initial programs, when we were talking to the National Institute of Health and their tech transfer office, they had a great deal of licensing managers, but they had no people that had market, industry, or business experience out of that 65-person office. And I said, well, you need an EIR, and that's an entrepreneur in residence. And they said, well, what is that? And what do they do? And I said, well, it's an experienced person that comes from industry. They have been a successful entrepreneur. They've run a business, but they understand what needs to be connected with good technology and how do you connect it to commercialization partners or develop a go-to-market strategy. So that was one of the things that was missing in the region, and we created the first entrepreneur in residence program with the NIH back in around 2012. And I know you were getting ready to ask me a question, but if you just let me roll, Steve, I'm just going to keep rolling on some of the other things. And you'll learn that, there's not a shortage of wind with Rich Bendis here at the
It's
podcast.
okay. I love it. I love it. What I was going to ask, I was going back, what was, you mentioned real early on to provide services to these companies. What are some of those services? Just to give the audience an idea.
Basically, when we're talking about services, one of the first things was we're in the center of the headquarters for all of the non-dilutive funding, non-equity based funding with the NIH, who basically, up until now had about a over $40 billion budget, approach 47 billion today. And they had the SBIR program, which is $1.3 billion, $4 billion, which is the largest seed capital program for life sciences in America. But our region was not a great recipient in being competitive with Boston and San Francisco, going after non-dilutive funds. So the entrepreneurs who are running and building life science companies were doing it with their own resources, angel investors, and really didn't compete effectively. So we created a program to assist in pre-proposal assistance to help people get ready to apply for non-dilutive funding. And we still do that today. We've helped over 200 companies have about a 50% success rate. And that's something that's really still needed because all of the equity players would like to see as much non-dilutive funding coming into their companies. The EIR, or Executive in Residence or Entrepreneur in Residence program, the services provided there would be not bench research, but if you need help with your regulatory strategy, your clinical plan, reimbursement, intellectual property protection. How do you put your pitch deck and your business plan together for what the investor client is looking for? How do you connect the strategic partners or key opinion leaders that you can add to your advisory board? All of those things that really a lot of emerging life science companies don't know how to get access to and can't afford, and basically something that BioHealth Innovation created as part of its service portfolio to assist emerging life science companies. Actually, it's not even just the life science companies. It was the tech transfer offices at universities, large pharma and bio companies that wanted to spin out companies but didn't know much about the startup world. So it was really not just working with emerging entrepreneurs and researchers. It's working with the tech transfer offices, working with established companies that wanted to do spin outs as well. So, and that's really become the cornerstone program for BHI 15 years later. We have a cadre, and we'll get into this more, Steve, of about 33 entrepreneurs in residence that work for us, some full, mostly part-time people, and they're located around the United States. And what's unique about them is we have a bench strength that our team can provide knowledge and access to resources and every one of those things I've talked about, because each one of them doesn't know everything about that is necessary within the life science world, but we basically have complementary people who can basically provide whatever knowledge, network, introductions are needed in almost any element when you're trying to build your biohealth company.
That's great. And do they have again thinking about my audience, the IT world, right? Or do some of them come to you looking for fractional or part time or IT assistance or technology at all?
Yeah, basically, when you look at your world and fractional, well, one of the strengths of our EIR team is a lot of them will go in and because they can't afford full-time C-level people,
Right.
they'll go in as a fractional CBO, COO, CTO, CSO, CIO, CFO, everything that you can, even CEO. So we've had people go in to work with the researchers and scientists, and they'll go in on a fractional basis, an hourly basis, a consulting basis, based on what the needs are and what can be afforded at that time. And one thing that's also unique about our people is that most of our people are not sitting on a bench at a venture capital firm or at a university looking for their next job. They all have gigs that they are working on today. They use what they do for BHI to supplement their incomes. It's not as much primary income, and they do it on a part-time, hourly, or project basis. And like you say, you're in the IT world, so basically we have people that have the digital health, the AI experience, the machine learning experience, and a lot of that sometimes is supplementary to the core business, where it might not be an IT company, but they still need access to the IT resources that they have in trying to grow their business today.
Right. And so we'll have conversations with companies where, they'll have their foundational folks in there, right? Doing their desktops and their phones and stuff like that. But then, like you said, they can't afford the high level, I don't know, make it up, somebody that can do their cybersecurity or somebody that can do commercial systems if they're getting close to that, or somebody for ERP or whatever, their research systems. So they'll look for a fractional hourly. Maybe they only need them 6 hours a week. Maybe they need them for 2 months for 10 hours a week, whatever the number is, I don't know. But
Right.
they talk to us and they say, hey, listen, do you know somebody? And we know a lot of different leaders, right, that do that kind of work. And I wasn't sure if that's something that you get involved with, but it sounds like as
Yeah, I
well.
mean, basically, what you do would be complementary because I wouldn't say that our sweet spot is the IT world, even though we have access to IT professionals.
Right.
Our sweet spot really is the pharma, the bio, the medical device, the vaccine worlds. And what you're seeing is all of the companies today and entrepreneurs need IT services. And if you look at where AI is being used today, whether it's with a clinical research organization, whether it's look for pipeline development,
Right.
looking for market research, competitive analysis, and all of those things.
Right.
The IT world and IT experts and people who understand AI and how to use it today is becoming critical to almost any type of a life science business today.
Oh, it is. And it's even a lot of the boards and a lot of the heads of these companies, because we're not talking huge companies, right? There's not a ton of people inside them. So the heads of the board of directors or whatever, they want to know, what's my exposure, right, with the AI and such. So the governance, the security, the data protection, all that stuff. And there's folks that handle that as well, right? And that they do fall on the IT side as well.
Yeah, they fall on the IT side. And, basically, so when those needs are identified, if we don't have the bench strength to address it, then we'll try to find other partners we can work with who have that expertise to bring into the company. So our goal isn't to be in total control of everything that's going on with that company. It's to find the right resources to help them progress what they're trying to do with their business, protect their intellectual property, and have the security that they need, as well as basically look at sort of the IP protection that's necessary.
Sure, to make them as successful as they can be and prop
Right.
them up as best you can based on your expertise. Which brings me to your expertise. How did you get this started, and what's your background like to launch
Yeah.
something like this?
Well, Steve, your listeners probably can't see me, but I'm old, and I guess with age comes experience and a lot of different things. But I started my career many, many, many years ago in large corporations. Started with Quaker Oats, Polaroid, Texas Instruments, Marion Laboratories, Kimberly Services, which was a national nursing service firm. I took a healthcare IT company
Uh-huh.
public on NASDAQ, which
Oh,
is
very cool.
directly in your world. And we had about 150 people. We had a dedicated turnkey pharmacy system for hospitals, materials management system for hospitals. We sort of specialized in small hospitals. And I had a whole bunch of installation people, development people, IT people, and I don't have a technical background.
Right.
I have
That's
a
great.
business background.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, sure.
and basically, we were able to take that public on NASDAQ, sold it. And after we sold it, I created my own little, I called it a venture capital firm. But in Kansas City, I was just an angel investor and was making investments in technology and life science companies. Then I got, asked by the governor of Kansas to be in the Kansas Technology Enterprise Corporation Board, which is a technology-based economic development firm for the state of Kansas that invested in early-stage companies. I became the chairman and later became the president of K-Tech, and then ultimately moved on to Philadelphia, became the founder and CEO of Innovation Philadelphia, which was focused on regional economic development around technology and life sciences. Through all of this, Steve, I ended up speaking and consulting with a number of states, ecosystems, and countries around the world, and sort of fell into this Maryland gig. I was speaking at the National Academy of Sciences on what it takes to build a vibrant life science or biocluster in your region. And somebody from Johns Hopkins heard me and said, "We've been trying to do this in Maryland for many years. Come down and talk to us and see what we can do." And then that's sort of, I came in as a consultant. When we created BioHealth Innovation, I said, "I'll help you find a president." And I had no desire to move to Rockville, Maryland, or take on another gig at this stage of my life. But what I found was more assets in that region that were underutilized than almost any other place I'd been in the world. When you have the NIH and the FDA in your background, and you have CMS and HHS, and you have all of these companies and academic institutions. So here I am, 15 years later, still a CEO of BioHealth Innovation, only because we still haven't reached our full potential yet. And I'm still motivated to do what I do on a daily basis. And more importantly, I have a team of 40 full and part-time people across the country that makes my job very easy because they're all professional and they are top-notch at what they do.
Very cool. That's awesome. I like that. And so you've been doing your thing there for 15 years, right? So you've seen companies come, companies go, companies merge, companies sell, so on and so forth, right? Throughout all that time.
Yeah, basically, the other thing is a nonprofit, and this is something that I've done over the last 30 years in all of the nonprofit organizations I've been involved with, is we have a for-profit subsidiary.
Oh,
That's BHI Management Inc. And we provide sweat equity services with fractional people or spin outs or startups. And we don't have a venture fund, but we've been able to obtain a sweat equity in about 27 companies in our for-profit subsidiary. We've had 6 exits, which one of them was a 7-figure exit, which is very nice for a nonprofit organization. And so BHI functions basically almost as an independent nonprofit consulting firm, like you would see with Booz Allen or McKinsey or Deloitte or other firms that are out there, and on a fee-for-service basis. So we don't have the luxury of getting a lot of grants to operate BHI. We have to make our way by actually providing revenue to support our team that we have and the services we're providing. And we've been very fortunate to be able to generate significant revenues over time. And we have some very nice contracts now with NIH and ARPA-H, some universities that utilize our team, pay for our team to be engaged with them, and it provides us a nice margin to be successful and sustainable today.
that's great. That's awesome. When I was in college, 150 years ago, I had no idea what biotechs were, and I took a job because I wanted to pay. I had a $300 credit card bill, which was just killing me, right? So I had to get rid of that before I graduated. So I joined I was in Boston, and I joined, I took an odd job with this ice company. And, I don't mind getting up early. Any college kid doesn't want to get up early. So I'm at work at 3 in the morning, and I work from 3 to 6 driving around Cambridge, Mass, delivering dry ice to all these labs, the schools and the biotechs and stuff like that. It was pretty cool. It was fun. And I had no idea again what a biotech was then, I've
And
come
here you are today doing BioBites.
that's it. Yeah,
Yeah, so I mean, you're not a trained PhD either, just like I'm not, right?
Right. Yeah, no, I'm way far from it. My
I
kids
am
take
as
after my
well.
wife, so.
Yeah.
So now from an industry perspective, what do you see, right now? Meaning what's kind of what are the trends? It's just sort of I just because you see a lot of different things, right? I know they're geographic, but I think they're probably also a representative of the industry as a whole, right? So, what are you seeing as the trends? Because I hear from some investors and I hear from some people that you know, the opportunities are still out there for small companies if investors want to get in and such. It's just this whole downturn that we just went through when interest rates spiked kind of smoked out some of the ones that weren't going to make it anyway eventually, right? So some of these investors are starting to say to me, "Well, valuations are going up because there's fewer opportunities, but we all still have money." Are you seeing and hearing that? Tell me what your read is on all that.
Well, I'm just gonna say in my over 50-year history, working, the last 3 months have been the most challenging in my life, and it has to do a lot with what's going on that we have no control over. And basically what's going on with this current administration where nobody can plan long term, where the priorities change day to day. And at this particular point in time, it is just unbelievably challenging to be an emerging early stage life science or biohealth entrepreneur because what's going on in the investment community is um, the VCs and private equity firms, family offices would like to see some returns on their investment. Right now, if you invest in an early stage bio, of course, it's going to take 10 to 15 years before they might be able to get a product into the market and a lot of money. And some of them have a lot of things in their portfolio right now that need follow on capital. So there's not as much investment going into early stage or pre seed or pre series A life science companies as there were before because they need clinical stage assets to invest in that are phase one, phase two clinical trials, which are closer to getting to commercialization or being attractive to the larger firms to acquire. And the IPO market's very slow right now. The early stage investor market's very slow. I just saw some statistics from the PitchBook and NVCA. The first quarter, this is probably good for you. 77% of the dollars invested went into AI deals.
Wow. Wow.
77%. And 66% of that happened in San Francisco. And
Woo.
then you look at Boston and New York. And so if you're outside of those three primary markets and you're not doing anything in AI or AI related in the first quarter, you were sort of on the outside looking in.
Sure.
It's sort of the same kind of money I saw, like $5 billion being invested. But when you have 77% of the dollars going into AI related deals, that basically says that you've got a life science company that's involved in large or small molecules that doesn't need AI or machine learning or quantum computing right now, and you're not at phase one clinical trials, you're struggling to get money right now. The other ripple effect is, you know, public money. If you look at what's going on with SBIR grants, and you look at what's going on with some of like the ARPA-H investments, um, when you talk about potentially an NIH budget, which is proposed and it's not approved, and there'll be significant date going from 47 billion to 27 billion dollars, reducing 27 NIH institutes down to 8 institutes, and you have, a director of HHS who has his own opinion of what priority should be in. Like he just said, well, we'd like to come up with a cure for autism by September, but doesn't believe significantly in vaccines. So, if you're in the vaccine business right now, you're saying, what the hell do I do? And that's for investors as well. But then take a look at that NIH money that is going to academic institutions that 95% of the companies that have gotten things commercialized in the pharmaceutical world over the last 10 years received some public money. Okay. And a lot of that did research at NIH, joint research, or with an academic institution. So if the overall budget's going to go down, academic institutions are going to receive less money for early stage research. There's going to be potentially less money for SBIRs. There's going to be less money in overall investment through the life science world through NIH, which is the largest life science investor in the world and has been for many years. It's really challenging right now to say, where do I place my bets? And if I'm an early stage company, what am I going to do to leverage other resources to survive through this little period? It might be 3.5 years. I don't know how long it's going to be.
It might
And, how do we find a way to navigate? Because I've heard major clusters, it's beautiful to be in Silicon Valley and Route 128 up in Boston. But if you have all of these pre-Series A and preclinical companies all looking for money at the same time, and the investors have to take care of their existing portfolio, and that there are people in their existing portfolio need funded, that means that's where the priority is going to be rather than taking a lot of new investments. So that's why I'm saying right now, the challenge over the last 3 months from an investor standpoint, I think, and for early stage life science companies, has been one of the most challenging times that I've gone through in my career.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it's obviously it's tough all the way around. It's tough in our industry too. When you talk about AI, just to circle back to that, I think you said 80% of the funds are going into
77% of the investments in the first quarter of 2025 went into AI related deals.
Right. And what I've read two different things. 80%, somewhere between 70 and 80% of AI projects today fail. So, I think that a lot of folks, well, they don't know what they don't know, right?
Yeah.
And most of it, when I talk to my CIOs and I have folks on my podcast, it comes down to the data, right? If your data is not ready to be consumed by AI or be used by AI, it's going to fall flat on its face. It's not going to get there.
Yeah, but at 78% failing is no different than typically what happens with most entrepreneurs.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
so I mean, to be able to get that survival rate past 5 years of existence, it is you're talking a very small percentage to be able to survive in early stage, high risk technology or life science projects. So yeah, and the other thing is, I think what we're going through, if you remember, we had the nanotechnology era.
Yeah.
We had the big semiconductor era with big computers. We had biotechnology era, which isn't over, but everybody wanted to be in nanotechnology. Everyone wanted to be in a semiconductor business. Everyone wanted to be in the biotechnology business. Now everybody wants to be in the artificial intelligence business.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So I look at AI and all of those other things we just talked about as enabling technologies.
Should be.
They should be enabling, but at the end of the day, how many of the AI, machine learning, or quantum companies have their own products that they can market and sell, okay, rather than providing services to other people or being integrated into other people's operations? And that's the big challenge right now is, I think, investors and companies, unless you have a pathway with your technology to come up with proprietary end user products that you can sell, then you become an enabling technology and it becomes a little bit more challenging to understand how to use it. Okay. So, and that's where I think everybody's confused right now. Most CEOs are not technology oriented or IT oriented. They're dependent on their IT teams to advise them on what to do.
That's why I mentioned those boards of directors and those CEOs are worried about their downside, the governance, the what's my downside of this AI thing? What's it going to expose me to? I
Sure.
hear about the upside. I read about the upside. My buddies are talking about it on the golf course, but what's my downside? How do I protect against my downside?
Sure, it's the greed and the fear.
Sure.
It's the
Yeah.
greed of how do we maximize getting profits or cash or returns out of this thing, but also it's the fear of losing out.
Those are two
And
things that
so
run Wall Street, right? I mean, Warren Buffett always said, right? So,
yeah, I mean that's why Buffett may get into IA 10 years from now. He might not get into it today.
right. Yeah.
It took him a long time to get into Google and Amazon and the technology stocks. He didn't
Yeah.
do it when they were just emerging.
No, no. Now, is there, as we're talking about this, and maybe I'm completely off the wall, but are there any proposals or any thoughts or any articles or anything about the government getting involved, having an equity stake in some of this stuff and participating in the upside, or is that completely crazy? Am I just should I be shot right now?
No, I think, to be honest with you, there's nothing wrong with the government getting a return on investment for what they invest in. And, if I was running the SBIR program 40 or 50 years ago, I would have found some way to get a return on the investment. Uh, don't want to control the investment that is made in these early stage companies. I just want to be a passive investor. But if it's successful, how do we generate royalties and licenses? And NIH has done some of that with royalties and
Oh, they
licenses.
have. Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
they've gotten some returns, but they could have generated significantly greater returns, just like universities. It took them a long time
Yeah.
for universities to take equity in companies or spinouts that they were creating because they were generally in the royalty and the license game.
Right.
And one of the things we did back 30 years ago at Kansas Technology Enterprise Corporation, we had a royalty portfolio of 150 companies, and then we converted it to taking equity in companies.
Oh, really?
We
Very
were
cool.
really one of the early economic development state programs to take equity.
Very cool.
And so that was something that in everything that I have done from a nonprofit perspective, we've always had a for-profit component related to it, just like we have at BHI or Innovation Philadelphia or at K-Tech in those days, and took equity. And the equity is there to supplement the income and operating capital needed for nonprofit
The
organizations.
nonprofit. So that's where the money comes from. Okay.
So the key is, although the federal government primarily is like a nonprofit entity, and one of the things I'm hearing from this administration is there might be a way to look at generating some equity returns on the investments that they may make in the future on some of these programs. And I don't see anything wrong with that.
No, I mean, listen, especially if people are looking at this saying we're spending all this money, we're not getting anything back. We're the first ones in, so to speak, right, to get these things going. Why not? And
Well, yeah,
how many are going to make money? 2 out of 100.
very few. Yeah. I mean, basically, look at the traditional portfolio of a venture capitalist, and you got, very few grand slams. You have a few home runs. Mostly you have singles, but at the end of the day, 50% of what you invest in is not going to show anything at all.
Right.
So if you get your money back, you're going to be very happy.
If you break even, right? Yeah.
And actually, venture capitalists, today they'd still like to get their long multiples of 10x's, but getting 1 and 2 and 3x's today is not a bad deal for people who are doing high risk investments.
But you're going to get a lot of people saying, "Is the government supposed to be in that kind of business?"
Yeah, should the
Right?
government be in that? Well, the key is if they're going to take some of the highest risk by making some of the early investments and placing some of the earliest bets that people in the private equity or the venture capital world aren't willing to take at this particular point in time, then why shouldn't they share in the rewards?
Sure. Okay.
But the
Yeah.
government should not be in control of these businesses.
No.
They shouldn't be on the boards of directors. They shouldn't help direct these businesses, but there's nothing wrong with them being a passive investor to get a return on investment.
And participating in the upside, fully understanding that this can go to zero,
Yeah.
and it is what it is, and it's part of the investment landscape, right?
Yeah. So I would look at it as incremental returns, not something that, you are planned, but there's no reason for them not to be able to share in some of the successes. But, the federal government isn't going to be like a true venture capitalist, but there's nothing wrong with them to find some way to generate some type of a return.
I almost view that like, and again, I'm being crazy, as flood insurance. The government does flood insurance, right? They're the only ones that'll underwrite it. An insurance company's not going to underwrite it because the only people that want it are the people that need it. So they're going to take a hit on that, but they got to hold up the bottom, meaning the folks that are getting flooded out, right? So
Right.
they got to backstop that. And that's kind of what the government would do with these investments is backstop the ones that nobody else is going to invest in anyway. And if they, like you said, at fiscal years, they break even, we're good. We're good.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, basically, at the end of the day, if you have a $47 billion portfolio at NIH, we're not saying that all $47 billion of that is generating a return.
Right.
Because their mission at NIH is to improve the quality of health for people around the United States. At the end of the day, when you're trying to improve that health, everything doesn't mean that it's going to become commercial. So a lot of the bets they're placing there, and they have a very stringent review system to decide what they invest in at the university level in this very early stage research with their review panels that they have. Basically, a certain amount of this will never ever see the light of day in the commercial market. But at the end of the day, we need to continue to do this high risk research, especially in diseases that what you'd classify orphan drugs that might have a small population of people who are sick or may die from a certain disease. Does that mean we should ignore them? No. But you're not going to see GlaxoSmithKline or Novartis or Pfizer investing a lot of money in something where there's only 1,000 people in the United States that are going to die from a certain disease because they can't generate a return from it. But should we ignore those people? No. But I mean, is there a role for government there? Yeah, there is.
Yeah, again, and that's what I mean by backstopping and helping these people out, doing a public good, but with
Right.
their investments, So now back to your organization. I think you have some events coming up, right? Don't you have some things coming soon?
As I mentioned before, we're a nonprofit, in essence, a nonprofit consulting firm. So we don't really want to compete with tech councils or trade associations that have members, and a lot of their revenue comes from putting events on for their members. So since we're not a member organization, I have a 25-member board, and that 25-member board is primarily made up of people from industry who all make a contribution to BHI, but the contribution we get from our board members represents 10 to 15% of our overall budget. It's very small. So what we have put on, and this will be our 11th year, is something called the BioHealth Capital Region Forum. And by the way, the BioHealth Capital Region was a term that didn't exist 8 years ago. But we had a number of our board members who were with large pharma companies like AstraZeneca who said, we don't really, we have the DMV, Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia, which everybody calls the Washington, D.C. area, but we really don't have a brand that's accepted around the biohealth industry. So we brought about 50 people together to meet for 6 months again, and we came up with a brand. And, it was hard to get away from biohealth because everybody liked the term of the convergence. Capital, we have a double work meeting there with capital. We have DC as the capital, and we also have a need for capital. And we wanted to do something that was regional because really you have the Potomac River, you have bridges, you have state lines, county lines, city lines, and there wasn't a great deal of cooperation between Maryland, DC, and Virginia. So we created the BioHealth Capital Region about 8 years ago, and BHI was asked to be sort of the intermediary to help nurture that brand for the region. Okay. So we created 11 years ago the BioHealth Capital Region Forum to bring people together. We originally did it at AstraZeneca, and we did it there until COVID hit. And then AstraZeneca didn't want large groups on their campus, and we understand that. And then we did it virtually for 2 years. And then we had a hybrid version about 3 years ago, half virtual and half in person. But the last 3 years, we've been in person at US Pharmacopoeia, which is based in Rockville, Maryland. And they have a nice amphitheater. They do work really around standards on over-the-counter medicinals in about 152 countries around the world. They're on our board of directors, and they have opened up their space. So we're going to have the 11th forum, September 23rd through 25th. We average between 700 to 11 people over a 3-day period. We don't charge anybody to come to register for the event, which is also unique. which we have the ability to do because every year I have to hold my hand out to raise about $200,000 in sponsorship, Steve,
Yeah.
to fund it so everybody can attend for free. So we have a day and a half thought leader conference on the 23rd and 24th. We have a Shark Tank competition, which we call Crab Trap, because of the Maryland crabs. And we do that on the second day, on the 24th. We'll have 5 companies who are selected out of 50 to 60 applicants. They get 10 minutes of fame to pitch in front of JP Morgan and Tedco, Virginia Bio,
Well, that's exciting.
Wilson Sonsini, some of the major firms that are the judges. And this year, we're going to add a new component. We're going to have 5 international companies as well, because we have a lot more people internationally that are interested in our region. So we had Israel, South Africa, UK, France, Sweden. There's a whole delegation from Scandinavia coming this year. So we're going to have 5 competitors in the crab trap competition on the second day internationally. And then on the third day, we have an investor conference with 100 companies that are invited and 50 investors. They do one-on-one meetings. There's no charge to the investors, no charge to the companies, and companies looking for money and investors who have money. So September 23rd through 25th, Rockville, Maryland, BioHealth Capital Region, free to attend. We'll have more information on our website, which is biohealthinnovation.org, for people to get information. Registration's not open right now. But the theme this year you're going to love. It's called the BioHealth Capital Region, where artificial and human intelligence converge.
Nice. I
So
like that.
it's basically AI is big this year.
Yeah.
AI doesn't work without humans behind it. The AI world is something that's in the sweet spot of what you do,
Sure.
Steve, with your organization. So it's where artificial and human intelligence converge, and we think it converges very well
Very
in the
cool.
Maryland, DC, and Virginia area.
Awesome. That's great. And so when will registration be open?
I'm going to have to ask Andy, who's not on this with me, but I
That's
think
all right.
probably in the next 30 days it'll be
Okay.
open.
Okay.
And we're still soliciting sponsors. So anybody that would like to be a sponsor for this event, we'll generally have about 40 to 50 sponsors who are sponsoring it. All of them get very, very good visibility. We also have a VIP dinner on the September 23rd on a Tuesday night at Ruth Chris for 100 people by invitation only.
Very cool.
And it's really sort of a thought leader, sponsor, speaker, and sort of shaker and mover dinner that we have once a year, which is very vibrant.
I wish I could make that.
Well, I know you told me you're going to be over in Munich, Germany at
An
having some
Oktoberfest.
beer, the
Yeah.
Oktoberfest.
Yeah. Big extended family trip. So
Well, I don't know. We'll have next. Well, I don't know if you continue to go back to Munich, you might miss us every year. But
nah, I'm not. I've been. I'm not. I don't need to go. I will see, but I don't think so.
well, send somebody from your firm. That would be fine.
Yeah, I could do
We'll
that
accept
too.
them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, cool. That's great stuff. Well, thank you very much. Anything else you want to cover? Because I have one last question I always ask of all my guests, but I'll
Okay.
do that.
Well, I think we sort of covered the gamut. I think
Yeah.
the key is there's no easy answer right now. I think we all have to be persistent and patient with what we're doing, recognizing, it's a very fluid environment that we're dealing with. The biggest challenge and why it's been challenging for me over the last 3 months is how do we protect our people?
Right.
When we don't have control of our own destinies and our people don't have control of their destinies because of that, it's been very challenging. So that's where I'm saying is that we're learning to become a little more patient. We have to be extremely diligent and persistent with what we're doing with our businesses now. We may not agree with everything that's going on around us, but we need to focus on those things that we have control of,
Right.
and find ways to support the entrepreneurs, the emerging businesses that are going through all of the challenges, just like we are, and find ways to assist them right now.
The current environment to me, I was making this analogy to somebody the other day where it reminded me a lot of when COVID first started. And I'm going to make the same analogy I used to then, where part of what we do is when we in our journey to help somebody find a new career opportunity, right? We walk down a path with them and we're logical, both of us, the whole way down the path, and we make sure everything's working each step of the way. But if fundamentally the path that we're walking on now we can't even trust it. We don't know what that path, if my next step's going to actually be supported by that path. All bets are off. All bets are off, and
You're
that's what
right.
happened during COVID, and that's what's happening right now.
Yeah, and we came out of COVID too.
We
So
did.
I mean, the key is America and the United States is very resilient. The people are very entrepreneurial and resilient. So there's always going to be peaks and valleys in our lives and in our businesses and our careers, and we know that we're going to come out of it. We just have to find a way to be patient, persistent, and protect as many people as we can.
And animal spirits will take over eventually. Greed and fear, right? Greed and fear. We're in a fear cycle. We're in a fear
Well,
cycle.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's a greed and fear because right now you have to be careful because there's a lot of greedy people that are going to take advantage of this window of opportunity right now. So you
Yep.
want to make certain you pick the strategic and the right partners to be with during this period.
Yeah.
People are going to stick with you when you're down. You need good partners, investors, board members that are going to stick with you right now, even though you might have a down cycle.
Correct. You do. You do.
Yep.
And that's what, again, I'm going to go back to Warren. That's what Warren would say, get greedy when others are fearful and get fearful when others are greedy, So, but to your point, you got to pick the right folks, the
You're
right
right.
partners to make sure that you're going to continue down that right path.
So what's the last question you ask everybody?
So I love live music. I go and see bands. I go and see live music. My question to my guests is, what would you say if you've seen live music? I haven't found anybody yet that hasn't.
Sure.
But what would you say has been your favorite live performance by an artist at any point in your life?
Well, it's easy. I'm a Neil Diamond fan. And
There
if,
you
if
go.
they say, what music would you play 24 hours a day? I'd play Sweet Caroline because I love it. I saw the show, basically A Beautiful Noise on Broadway,
Yeah.
which is Neil Diamond's life. I seen him live. Funny thing is, we were over in Dublin, Ireland. He had a concert over there.
Oh,
But
cool.
I was over there with my wife on a little vacation. We're staying at the Hilton Hotel, and guess who's sitting at the next table?
Seriously?
Just seriously. So
Wow.
I was just like a groupie. I said,
You were
this is.
beside yourself.
I told my wife, I said, this is ridiculous, but I'm going to go say hi.
I'm about to make a fool of both of us, so pay the bill. Get ready to get.
And I did it, and I don't have any regrets whatsoever of being able to say hello to somebody that I've admired in his music for.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Have you ever been to Fenway to see the Red Sox play?
I've been to Fenway in the 7th inning where they do Sweet Caroline.
We were there last Saturday. My daughter ran the marathon last week in Boston, and we went to a Red Sox game.
Right.
Crazy. Yeah.
It is fantastic. But basically, my family knows it. There's a restaurant here at the Jersey Shore where I go to. The guy who performs there knows I'm a Neil Diamond fan, and before we leave that night, he has to play Sweet Caroline.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, you got to that pretty quick. Some folks hem and haw, they think about it. No thinking. You were.
Oh, no. That's it. No question about it.
That's an easy one for you. Well, Rich, thank you very much. If something happens with my plans and they change, I'll make your event.
No, I hope you go to Munich. Even though we're going to have beer and wine and libations for people at our dinner and the receptions that we have, I think your environment will be a little more festive.
Fingers crossed, right?
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Good. Well, Rich, thank you very much for your time. For anybody checking us out, go out to Spotify, YouTube, Apple. Follow us, rate us, listen to the podcast. Thank you very much. Thanks, Rich.
Thank you, Steve.